quick reaction straight from work. Crystal Palace and Everton agree one of the more bizarre transfer deals that I can remember. They agree to swap Dwight McNeil and Brandon Johnson. And let's just give my quick uncut reaction in front of the Berlin Castle. So I thought about this quickly on my way home, and I think from an Everton fan perspective, there are three angles you can look at this deal. And let me start with the more negative one, because overall I think it's a positive deal for Everton. The negative version would be if you would have asked me at the start of the summer a list of options for the right wing, I'm pretty sure the name Brennan Johnson would never have come up. He's a player who's been out of form. It is also a deal that confirms how many Evertonians feel about our current recruitment. A deal that seems, at least in terms of where the player comes from, a little bit unimaginative, which can't be said about the structure of the deal because that's certainly creative. But the player himself feels like another rather uninspired signing. Another Premier League player, another player who has a bit of a name, played for a former top six club. That's unfortunately the profile Everton have been hunting for many years, and it does not exactly feel like the signal of a new, more inspired Everton under newer ownership. So both the player himself, but also what he signifies as a new signing on the right wing, could feel a little bit uninspiring. Not exactly what many Evertonians would have picked if they could have chosen the profile for a right winger. But certainly, and now let me move on to the other two angles and find a more positive angle. If we look at Johnson, he's definitely a player that offers a lot that you can talk yourself into as a fan. I'm honestly a little bit, when I heard the news about this deal yesterday, I was sure it couldn't be a straight swap because I thought Johnson, yes, he may have had overall a rather disappointing last season, but before that, overall, he's been a pretty good player. He's been an excellent player for Nottingham Forest, and he's certainly been a productive player for Tottenham. And then I also did a little bit of research, basic research on the internet, to see the reactions when Johnson was being transferred from Tottenham, the immediate reactions, and they weren't all negative. Some of the Tottenham fans were a little bit surprised why they let Johnson go. Not all of them, of course, but some were like, why are we letting one of our more productive attackers leave? So it wasn't like the mood around him has been terrible for years down the road. Um, let's say compared to someone like Dali Ali, who in some ways signifies is a good example to compare, I think, with Johnson. So it wasn't all negative. And then when we look at his Palace, he only played there for half a year in a little bit of a tumultuous, chaotic environment, with Glasner announcing that he would leave. Overall, Palace didn't have a very good second half to the season, even though they ended up winning another trophy, which I'm very jealous of. But I think there are a lot of mitigating factors that make you look at this deal even with more bewilderment. It's not like Johnson has been on a downward path his whole for like several years. It's just been more or less a season, and under Palace just half a year. So you wonder why they pulled the trigger on him so quickly. I'm almost doubting a little bit. Is there something in the background that we don't know? Does he have major off field issues? Was there major fallout between the coach and him? Because even that, like, he comes into a new setup with a new coach, so even if it didn't work out last season, you could have thought, okay, maybe under a new coach, one of the biggest signings in the club's history should be given another chance, right? But no, apparently Crystal Palace were couldn't wait to get rid of that, what they felt like must have been a terrible mistake, a terrible deal on their club's books, because now that is the second part officially. If you look at it from a value point of view, I think clearly Everton comes out on top in this deal. Maybe from a Palace point of view, you can deal with Everton now. On that front, you can argue that it's an okay deal. You swap a player that hasn't given you any major contribution with big wages, and you get rid of that contract. Instead, taking on a player that costs much less in wages, potentially playing a little bit bigger role than Johnson played for you. But then the other part is that the Johnson deal you made in winter. With this deal, Crystal Palace officially confirms that that has been a catastrophic deal. What did they pay? Like 35, north of 35 million pounds, right? For a 4.5 year contract. And you took that player on for only half a year. So the remaining 4 years, you basically he has given you zero value. But even then, like if you just compare the two players in terms of their ceiling, their career so far, even there, I would say Johnson is the more. I think neutrals would say Johnson would be the player with a little bit more value, right? I think is he younger or they're almost the same age? Maybe he's a little bit younger. He has had overall the more he's played at the bigger clubs, has had more been the more productive player, and certainly at the height of maybe his career in under Forest and in Tottenham, he looked like clearly a player who has a potentially brighter career. So I think in terms of that, as a straight swap, you would want to be the club that receives Johnson on a neutral basis. Who's the player who you would start, you would pick in a very uh, out of context setting. So Everton, they exchange a worse player for a better player in that sense. So on the value point, I think Everton also it looks much better for Everton because we are the same. Everton, from Everton's point of view, Dwight McNeil was in the same situation. He was a player that used to be a very good servant for the club in the past. But with the recent development, Everton trying to progress its style of play, the qualities of McNeil were almost negligent. They McNeil no longer really fits our squad.
Nearly forgot, but of course let me also add a brief passage on Dwight McNeil. First let me say, wish Dwight McNeil all the best. He was an Everton player during one of the most difficult times for the club, and overall he's been a very good servant. He scored some important goals for the team, and you could certainly never fault his effort. Seems like a very good guy as well. Also didn't have the easiest time off the pitch recently. And then, let me say what are the qualities Dwight McNeil brings. In isolation, he has certainly one of the best left foots in the Premier League. He's technically very, very good. He has a beautiful cross on him. If he's on the pitch, I would say Palace should let him be the set piece taker, certainly from corners. When Everton scored a lot of set piece goals, that was often due to the very good deliveries from McNeil. And he has a good shot on him. Like if you give him space from distance, he can score some cracking goals. Actually, his highlight reel looks extremely impressive. So he has a very good technique, good cross, good shot. Can also play a killer through ball if he's employed in the number 10. And he's a very, very hard-working player. He's he has a very good stamina. He will run up and down the pitch for you 90 minutes if you ask him to. So in that sense, he also has a good defensive utility. Can cover very well for the left back. If you employ a more offensive-minded left back, McNeil can also help out well on the defensive side of things. The only downfall for McNeil is twofold. One is he's extremely left-footed. So literally his right foot is more or less only there to stand on. And it really impacts him. So you will definitely see that it limits his vision on the pitch. It limits, once he has committed to a certain action, he can not really change it up quickly because he's so left-footed. And the second detrimental factor for him is his pace, because he's one of the slowest wingers in the Premier League, which overall limits how you can employ him. I think he would have been a better suited player for another era with much less pace, but it's simply down to those factors that it's hard to use him as a long-term winger option for a team. You can bring him in, maybe if the game is a little bit scruffy, you need someone to deliver some crosses, to deliver some good set pieces. I think he's definitely a serviceable substitute, good squad player to have, but as a long-term winger option for the Premier League, I think he lacks the pace, lacks the explosiveness, and I think he's someone, it's hard to, he limits what you can do as a team. He limits what you can expect from your winger. These are, I think, the factors that make Everton
want to try out another winger. We no longer have someone like Calvert Lewin and a Decore behind who benefit from having 15 crosses a game that are delivered with precision and quality. Rather, we're looking for other types of wingers now, and in that sense, McNeil was never didn't have much value for that team anymore. So to exchange him for a player with a little bit better ceiling, a player who can potentially help the team a lot more, that is also, I think, very positive for Everton. And then from a third angle, this is simply speaking as an Everton fan, looking at what this player means for Everton. In terms of profile and position, he's the much better fit for what Everton need. Currently, Everton have two clear left wingers in Njai and Tyreek George, and they only have one out and out right winger in Tyler Dibling, who's also a right winger that likes to drift inside. So to swap a third left winger in McNeil for a right winger and a right winger who offers a different profile to the right winger we already have, I think that in terms of balancing out the squad makes a lot of sense. Is it the player I would have picked? Probably not. But is it, under the circumstances, a good deal for Everton that offers in that sense, valuable, in a financial sense, a valuable, smart solution for a position that we desperately needed cover? I think yes, it does. It's a smart deal in that regard. It's overall a good deal. What I will say though, I will look at this deal with a little bit more remorse if it turns out that Moyes will start playing Johnson week in week out without any regard for his actual performances, without any tactical nuance to how he employs him. Because if Johnson means that one of the club's most valuable assets in Tyler Dibling is being stopped from progressing, well, then that deal turns into a bad deal for Everton. But I hope that Dibling and Johnson now they can have a nice competition for that spot on the right wing. And even I think because they have such different profiles, Johnson being a more someone that goes on the outside, someone that is right-footed, someone that is very fast, someone that likes to run in behind, someone that is also a genuine goal threat. Whereas Dibling, left-footed, likes to drift inside, looking for the killer pass, maybe looking for a diagonal, a shot from distance. I hope that Moyes will actually use that to our advantage, use it to set the team up differently depending on the opposition, making some tactical tweaks there with these different profiles at his disposal. Then it can be. I can definitely see a world where that is can be very positive. And I was also a little bit surprised by the age. Johnson is still only 24, so he's in that under 26 bracket. That yeah, as long as he plays finds a little bit of form again, then he also still holds some value. Maybe we won't sell him for the amount Crystal Palace paid, but even if Everton managed to get whatever at some point in the future, 15, 20 million for him, if he finds some form again, then I think there's definitely a world where he has a resale value. If, of course, a club is willing to take on his wages. Yeah, I think that's more or less it. Just a quick reaction. I would be very curious from both Palace fans and Everton fans. How do you feel about this deal? Let me know. See you soon. Adios.